Hidden Gems, Episode 23, The Hidden Gems Christmas Special. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Cameron. Thanks for listening to our show.
Yes.
Guys, Travis crushed it again, right?
Absolutely killed it again. Unbelievable.
So good.
It was.
It's been an absolute blast getting to work with him on all sorts of music this year.
Yep.
And this one was honestly no different. If you didn't pick up on it, we kind of took a Mannheim Steamroller approach to this one.
Yep.
So good.
Very evident.
I love it. I have to say, I have had this building enthusiasm to say how awesome Travis has been. He's been great for your whole length of your podcast, but in the last 2 or 3 episodes, I've been listening to his background music, and it's almost making you guys sound really professional. I mean, you guys are really just about ready to reach out and touch it, but
Close.
he's rocking
So close.
it.
Thanks,
right.
Travis.
That's right. We don't sound like complete hacks when we got Travis on
Exactly.
staff. Yeah, you know, when we did the Halloween episode, I really didn't think he could ever top that one. Because he did such a good job with the Stranger Things, Hidden Gem feel to it. And I have to say, although I think it's close, I think I prefer this one just a little bit more. I really think he nailed it just perfectly.
It just has a fun feel to it.
It does. It does.
Well, huge thanks to Travis for working with us.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I've got a bit of an announcement, I suppose.
Yeah, you do.
So, for those of our audience members who tuned in last episode, you'll know that we rolled out some changes to our Patreon and that we introduced a new store on our website, Hidden Gems, boardgamepodcast.com/store. We've got a new t-shirt. We're all sporting that t-shirt
Yes, we are.
tonight,
All
along with our
wearing it.
Santa hats. That's right.
Bill rocking the Santa suspenders, but he's got the shirt on.
And the Santa beard, I might say. It's very long and filled in. I love it.
Bill, you look like a mall Santa.
What
I
can
say
I
that
say?
in the most uninsulting way possible.
Of the 3 of us here, I am really committing to this episode.
That's right.
I think you guys are going to step up.
Yeah. So we rolled out this new shirt, and because I'm a goof, despite being a web developer, I failed to connect the dots on a couple of elements in the store, which left it live but not working. And so if you're one of those folks out there who ran to our website in hopes of getting yourself a shirt and found that the store was broken, I'm so sorry. The egg is on my face. The eggnog is on my face. Yeah. We wanted to tell everyone we actually have fixed those issues. We've tested it. In fact, we've had someone purchase a shirt on the store. Our friend Nick Spicer, who is one of our patrons on Patreon. He's been with us since the beginning.
Yes.
And he's a personal friend of ours, I should mention as well. We played D&D together for a number of years. So thank you for all the support, Nick, and for being our quality assurance to make sure that our store works.
Yeah,
Send us a picture of himself wearing it.
He did, yeah. I'm going to post it on Instagram. So if you want to see what the shirt looks like, he's sporting that. Looks good on him.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take some pictures of us, too, just so everybody can see what it looks like if they're interested in picking up one as well.
I'll give it the Men in Black line. He actually makes that shirt look good.
He does. He really does.
Yeah, and if you would like to join Nick and sport the Hidden Gems shirt, you can actually get one as a Christmas gift / sorry, our store was broken. We are introducing a new coupon code to let anyone out there that's been following us throughout the year and wants to pick up a shirt. You can get 15% off using the code Jingle Gems.
That's right.
It's like Jingle Bells, but Jingle Gems, it's all one word. Head over to the store, grab your shirt, Jingle Gems, you'll get 15% off, and that code will be available through the end of the year.
Yep.
I'm a goof, and Merry Christmas.
In the spirit of Christmas giving and
forgiveness
and giving gifts, we're going to offer this 15% code. Forgive us, we're sorry, folks, for working out the tweaks.
So that's my announcement for the week. What do you want to share with everyone, Bill?
Well, I think I mentioned this the last episode, but I'm reading a book called Anil Seth's A New Science of Consciousness, and it is a really, really dense book, I guess I should say.
Sounds riveting.
It's riveting, but I
Right.
love it. I love all kind of brain science, sociology kinds of things.
Yep.
And the last chapter I read was called Perceiving from the Inside Out, and it talks about our controlled hallucinations in the world. And I won't go into that part of it, but there was one part that talked about how we process information in the world. And I wanted to talk about basically 3 categories of things when you process information. The first one was in deduction. And deduction is just using logic. For instance, Chris is older than Cameron, and Bill is older than Chris. Thus, therefore, Bill is older than Cameron.
Way older.
Yeah, yes, way older.
Though, Chris.
Right. You can infer. That's the next one. That's induction. Induction is something you think is true or you might surmise is true. For instance, the sun rises in the west every day, and so you're pretty sure it's going to come from the same direction. If you're playing a game and you think something's going to happen next, you're using induction to say, I'm understanding what's happening in front of me, and you're applying
Trying to
induction
figure out,
logic.
who should I attack? And you're like, well, Chris is the most likely person to win,
Right.
therefore I will attack Chris.
Right. And the last one is abduction, that if you are presented something and you're trying to figure out how it got there and you're using whatever powers or thoughts to come up with what that looks like, it's called abduction. For instance, if you lived in Las Vegas and you got up in the morning and your lawn's wet, it hardly ever rains in Las Vegas. So you have to decide, did it actually rain last night or did I forget to turn off my sprinklers? And through whatever logic you have, you figure out through abduction what you think is the most likely thing to happen.
Right.
Is something actually wrong with the way that Squarespace serves up digital stores, or did Cameron just not do something right?
Right.
Which
Was
one is more
Clancy
likely?
crazy?
Cameron's
Yes.
dumb or
Right.
Squarespace is dumb?
Yes. So I took those three things and started thinking about the way you three guys play games.
Yep.
I started with Jason because he's probably the easiest, and I thought he likes games of deduction. He likes to be in control.
Yeah, control freak.
I
He
didn't
can't
say that.
handle any random chance or anything.
He'll only
Exactly.
take a move if he knows it's going to affect the game in some way.
Right.
Like beating Cam.
Right. And then with Chris, I couldn't really decide. I think he likes a deduction and induction, but what I thought was kind of funny is at the end of the game, he will do the abduction process, and if he thinks that he can tease out how the game plays out so that you know that it's going to follow a certain pattern all the way through, it ends up on Bill's shelf of shame.
That's right.
As quick as he can, and he's $15 richer.
This conversation might come up later tonight. It turns out.
Oh boy. Anyway, with Cameron, I am still trying to figure out what Cameron likes. Cameron, why don't you tell me what you like?
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where I necessarily
about this?
land. Yeah.
Right. It's nerdy
Which one
stuff.
of those three things is the most fun and the least like work?
I think you operate in the induction space, but that's just
Probably.
me going way out there. Anyway, that's what I've been doing for fun.
I love
Like,
your cerebral nature,
Yeah,
Bill.
yeah.
You think at a loftier level than we do. I
that
can't
is
hang
not
with you
true.
most of the time.
No, you just show me my percentages.
Only when you ask.
Okay, Chris, what have you got to share with us tonight?
Yeah. So I have something very thoughtful and informative and very deep to talk about, and
Deep
that
thoughts with
is
Chris.
that I watched the new Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man: No Way Home, and I've got to tell you guys, fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoyed it. So I've talked a little bit about the MCU on here before. I ranked all the Phase 4 movies up to this point. Some better than others. I talked about how much I enjoyed Eternals. I can tell you that I enjoyed this Marvel movie much more than Eternals.
Really?
This is the best one by far. And I know, Cameron, you don't really care for Marvel stuff, but Bill, I think that you enjoy
I
the
love
MCU
Marvel stuff. Yeah, I've watched them all the way through, and I've surprisingly enjoyed the Spider-Man movies because I kind of came in with two strikes against it, but both the Tom Hollands I really like, so I can't wait to see it.
Interesting. So why the strikes against it? Just out of curiosity.
I guess I just felt like it was getting tired or something.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So yeah, I just didn't know where they were going to go with it.
Gotcha.
So,
Well, I can tell you, they knocked this one absolutely out of the park. This movie, without a doubt, is a love letter to Marvel Cinematic Universe movie lovers, but it's also a love letter to comic book lovers in general.
Is it much different from the old ones? Because to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of all of the various Marvel stuff, but I have really enjoyed the Spider-Man movies more than any of the other comic book movies over time. I really enjoyed the Tobey Maguire movies.
Okay.
They were magical for me.
Yeah,
the last one I watched was Andrew Garfield, and I heard that the second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man was like,
Okay.
and everyone kind of laughed about it.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, forget it. I'm not even going to try anymore.
Okay. Well, based on everything you've just said, just go watch this
Into
movie.
the Spider-Verse. I really liked Into the Spider-Verse.
Go watch this movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything you've just said has just reaffirmed to me that you'll enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, without giving too much away, I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay. And as I've mentioned on here many times before, I'm a huge fan of the multiverse. Love multiversal theory as it pertains to comic books, particularly DC. Crisis on Infinite Earths, Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis, all of that multiverse stuff that DC does so well.
Okay.
Now Marvel is moving into with Kang the Conqueror and all the stuff they're doing with the Multiverse of Madness. And I can just tell you that, in my opinion, they're doing it really, really well.
Have you watched the What If on Disney+?
Yes, I have.
I'm like 4 episodes into that. I thought certainly the first one was awesome, and I can kind of see where it's progressing. I'm not all the way through, so no spoilers, but that gives me hope that they can do the multiverse right.
They definitely can. And I will tell you, in regards to What If, I mentioned this a few episodes ago, the second to last episode of What If is some of the best stuff that the MCU has done ever.
Really?
Ever. It's so good. It's Age of Ultron stuff, which is from the comics, but man, they just knocked it out of the park. And one more thing I'll say about it, just to pump you up, to try to get you to go see it if you're on the fence. When I saw Endgame, I saw it opening weekend in the theaters, and our theater was electric.
Oh, okay.
It was one of these experiences where people were shouting and clapping and yelling. Everybody was into it, right?
Because I love those types of movie-going experiences. That's like why you, to me, should go to the theater. Who cares about a giant big screen, right? It's when you get that rhythm in the crowd and people laughing and shouting and clapping at the end. Like, that's... magical movie.
They're rare experiences, right? Prior to Endgame, the last time I could remember that happening was the last Harry Potter movie.
Oh, okay.
The final Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Yeah.
Endgame was much more so than that one. I will say this particular Spider-Man doesn't approach what Endgame was in that regard, but it's reminiscent for sure. It has some really stand-up moments. So
that's awesome.
Check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
that's good.
Very cool.
Enough about Spider-Man. So this is where we usually transition into cocktails. And because I was watching Spider-Man in Asheville this past weekend, because I was visiting my parents for early Christmas, Bill, knowing I was going to be out of town, offered to take a little bit off my plate and said, hey, you mind if I try doing the cocktail this week? So I happily obliged and let him do that. So I'm going to kick it over to Bill. What are we drinking this week, Bill?
I did. So this week I went with a homemade eggnog. I know you guys here are brown liquor fans.
Yes, sir.
So I went with the eggnog. In the recipe, it has 3 shots of brandy, 2 shots of dark rum, and 1 shot of whiskey.
Oh, man.
Which
Is this a per serving recipe? Because that sounds awesome.
No, this is to a quart, I think.
Okay.
So it is spread over a little bit, but you can probably taste it. And then put some fresh nutmeg on top, which
it's
is just
so good.
freshly
Very
grated.
aromatic.
I love nutmeg on a drink. We were talking about this earlier. I think a big part of cocktails is when you bring the glass to your mouth and to your nose, the smell is just as important as the taste, in my opinion. And this one just has a really nice fragrance to it.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's kind of funny. I come here with training wheels on my drinking, right? But I had some of this eggnog that I created earlier in the week that I was planning to bring here tonight so it can melt, because the eggnog, to me, needs to sit 24, 48 hours so the liquor and the eggnog can melt together so it tastes good.
Yep. Well, you like those strong whiskey drinks.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm glad you guys like it.
I'm a minimum 100 proof or above kind of guy.
There you go.
I don't do these wimpy 75, 80 proof bourbons.
Caramel flavors. And
Caramel salt.
Bill's like, hey, I've got this saltwater flavored taffy bourbon. It's
right.
like 75 proof. And I'm like, man, get that stuff away from me.
Exactly. But they put a nipple on my glass. So I was like, I figured,
where'd
stick out of that.
you get the recipe for this one?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, my sister-in-law's father is named Dr. Skip Philby, who passed away a few years ago. He worked at the Naval Proving Grounds making tank armor.
Okay.
Anyway, he was a great guy, the nicest guy in the world you could ever meet. But this is his recipe.
Awesome. Now here's the skip.
Here's the skip.
To skip.
Here.
Here.
All right. So this is obviously a Christmas-themed episode. So we're going to talk about Christmas-themed games this episode?
We are indeed. But before we get there, I really enjoyed what we did in our Halloween episode, where we talked about our feelings surrounding Halloween and our traditions and just our experience with the holiday. I like to think that our listeners enjoy these segments, learn a little bit more about us, and just hearing us talk about fun stuff like this.
Yeah. Or else they use that handy-dandy podcast navigation thing where they just skip 30 seconds 3 or 4 times.
So just check the timestamp if you don't want to hear any of this. But we're talking a little bit about Christmas tonight. Just some quick answers to some quick questions I've got.
All right.
Okay. Question number 1. Are you a Black Friday shopper? Yes or no?
I will say no. I had a horrible experience in Best Buy on that. And I will never, if I can help it, I will never go out on Black Friday. I will do it from my seat at home on the internet.
Oh,
but I will
right.
never
Cyber
go out.
Monday. Lame.
Exactly.
I'm going to say no, just because it's not generally something that I seek to do. I have had some fun, adventurous Black Friday running into Target where there's 64 lines. I've never done the camp out on the sidewalk outside the store to bull rush the door when it opens sort of thing. Maybe they don't do that anymore.
Well, I can tell you about 5 or 6 years ago, I did it a couple of times. So those are my 2 most memorable experiences with Black Friday. So I don't typically do it either. But 2 things that I absolutely will never forget in my lifetime because it was so ridiculous and painful, to be quite honest, was sitting out in the cold waiting for the NES and SNES Classic Editions.
Oh, yeah.
So if you
really
remember,
small ones.
Those were the little miniature Nintendos and Super Nintendos that had the games directly downloaded onto them.
Right.
They were for my kids, quote unquote, for Christmas. And the only way you could really reliably get them was to camp out at Best Buy.
Right.
So I went midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. People were there. Tents were set up.
Right.
And I was around 25th in line, which is pushing it.
There's people on the curb making hot dogs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were people there that had been there since 5 p.m. that day, right? Sat in there all night, managed to snag one of each of those. Still have them,
That's
actually.
awesome.
But yeah, the pretty memorable experience for me. All right. Favorite Christmas traditions?
I will have to go with singing around the piano on the day after Thanksgiving with my sister, who's a music major, at the piano and listening to my 2 daughters sing. Yeah, you feel like you made it in life when there's music in the air like that at Christmas.
So for me, a couple of these are in the realm of nostalgia because probably they won't continue on. But growing up, my mom was the music minister at our church, and so she was responsible for putting on all the Christmas pageants and the choir cantata and being the kid in the shepherd's outfit with the shepherd's crook and going to meet baby Jesus and all of that.
Somehow everybody at the nativity scene looks like they're 11 years old.
Yeah. A new one that Casey and I do is I played saxophone for a number of years through school. Yeah. And about the only time that I ever play my saxophone still is at least sometime during the Christmas season. We have a quiet night at home and I pull the saxophone out and jam out to some Christmas tunes.
Serenade Casey with your Christmas saxophone.
With my Christmas saxophone. I try to put on my best Kenny G and play some Walking in a Winter Wonderland.
Whoa, Kenny G, easy. All right.
Wow.
For me, similarly to you, Cameron, the Christmas story or Advent during the month of December is something we always read with our kids. Special for us. We really enjoy that. Christmas Eve tradition, ever since I was small, and this is something I actually instituted myself. This wasn't something my parents did. This is just something I always did, was before I attempted to go to sleep, successfully or unsuccessfully, I would watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And that is carried over to our kids, and it's Boris Karloff's Grinch Stole Christmas.
The only one.
The only one.
Not Jim Carrey.
Not Jim Carrey, not the Pixar animated crap. It's abhorrent to me. I don't want any of that. It's the original. And then after the kids have gone to bed, Tally and I's tradition is while we're wrapping numerous gifts for the kids, we watch A Christmas Story.
Okay.
Ralphie and his Red Ryder BB gun. Something we do every single year. All right. Talked a little bit about movies. What y'all's must-watch Christmas movies?
That's evolving now. The last 2 years we watched Elf, and that has been a lot of fun. Back in the days where the television came over antennas, certain movies would cycle every year and come out at certain times. And for me, and it would be interesting for the people of my generation out there that they feel this way at all.
In the
sound
50s.
of something like that. the Sound of Music used to come out around Christmas time, and I know it has absolutely no Christmas theme, but I have an association with it. And the Christmas Wish Book used to come out. Do you know anything about the Christmas?
Are you talking about the Sears catalog?
Yes,
Oh, heck yeah.
Because
I would lay down on the floor and circle about 500 things.
That was like the clouds parted and the angels sang when the Sears Christmas Wish Book came in.
I will tell those actually kind of went extinct for a while, and very smartly,
Amazon brought it back.
Of all people.
Oh, wow.
Releases a Christmas catalog of things that you can buy online from Amazon.
That's
smart.
hysterical. Yeah.
Because it's fun for a kid to go through a Christmas catalog, I think. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Right. Something you can hold in your hand.
Right.
So for me, definitely It's a Wonderful Life. It's just such a good one. That's the only one that I'm like, I gotta get it played at least once during the Christmas season.
Nice. For me, agree, Elf, totally. Christmas Eve with the kids, Home Alone, every time.
That's a good one.
And then for me, Die Hard.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually just watched Die Hard recently. Casey had never seen it. And it's Christmas season. Let's do Die Hard.
Totally a Christmas movie.
So good.
Love it.
Awesome.
All right. Must listen to Christmas music or album.
Bing Crosby's White Christmas.
Yeah.
That just means Christmas. So
easy one.
Me too. My favorite.
Yeah, for me, I mentioned this briefly talking about the thematic music for this episode, but Mannheim Steamroller has always been a favorite. I know not everyone loves it, but man, they've got some just amazingly awesome Christmas albums.
Yeah.
And then also the Gene Autry Christmas music. Those are a couple of albums that we would always listen to when decorating our Christmas tree.
You're such an old spirit, man, with Christmas.
I know,
it's
man.
like It's a Wonderful Life and Gene Autry.
really. That's funny. Well, I'll have to give a shout out to Pentatonics because that's what we've been listening to.
Oh,
lately.
they have some good
great
stuff.
My kids love that. I totally agree. Bing Crosby White Christmas album from beginning to end, numerous times for me over the year. Chipmunks Christmas, just because it's fun.
Yeah.
I still want a hula hoop.
Alvin, stop that crazy thing.
And then Charlie Brown Christmas, I really enjoy, particularly the track Skating. We always play it on Christmas morning when we open our gifts. Really like it.
Yeah.
Almost done. Most memorable or special Christmas gifts?
I will have to say mine was the electric football set that had the Baltimore Colts versus the Dallas Cowboys. That set my favorite team forever. It is the Baltimore Colts. I don't even know where they are now. It has to be the Baltimore
Indianapolis.
Colts. They're dead to me.
So for me, the original NES with Super Mario Brothers 3, the Megazord set for Power Rangers.
Okay.
And the other one was each of my brothers and I, when we turned 12, we got a 20 gauge shotgun. And that was our introduction to hunting and target shooting and that sort of thing. So that was a
Where'd
big
you
deal.
grow up again?
Newport, North Carolina. Yeah.
Right. Stay out of Newport,
That's
North
right.
Carolina.
That's right. And we would go dove hunting and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so
right.
I actually still have it. I still have that today. It's kind of cool.
Cool.
Similarly to you, Cameron, Nintendo, but for me, the Super Nintendo. Vividly, honestly, out of any gift I've ever gotten in my life, this one struck me the most. And I think it was because there was such a graphical jump from the NES to the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was 8 years old, so 1990. And I remember just being mind blown at how different it looks. I mean, if you look at Super Mario Brothers and then you put Super Mario World next to it,
It's night
it
and
looks
day.
like 30 years of advancement.
Right.
At least back then, right?
Right. Oh,
And Mario could fly.
Right.
He could hover.
Yoshi
Yeah, that's
was
so Yoshi,
introduced.
yeah. Oh
you
my
know,
gosh, yeah.
so many new things.
The thing that
The
blew
joy
my
playing that
mind
game.
about that game was when you're crawling through one of Bowser's castles and you could click the button and it would send you to the backside of
The chain link
of the
fences.
gate.
Yeah.
Like I was like, whoa, this is like there's depth to this
Yep.
now. I'm not just jumping across the screen anymore.
Yeah, crazy.
What I find hysterical now is we had the ramp of you need better graphics for the game to be better for so long, and we've had this tipping point where now things are going back to have that 8-bit, 32-bit look, and it's really much more about gameplay versus how it looks, and I like that
Because they release so many games with really amazing
Like,
graphics that absolutely suck.
People are looking for those unique gameplay experiences now, like Celeste. It's just a standard 2D platformer, but that game is
Excruciating.
amazing
Yeah.
and masochistically difficult. Yeah, it's brutal, but so good.
There was the Knight game that you used to
Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight. Yeah,
Play
yeah.
Hollow Knight, everybody.
Yeah.
So good. We're just going
Right.
to keep talking about it until everybody tells us they played it, and then we'll shut up about it.
Right.
So that one, and then one other, I got to mention it because it's special to me. So as a kid, and even to today, I love the Calvin and Hobbes comic strip, and my parents knew that I did. And so my mom got me a stuffed tiger that looks very much like Hobbes. And yes, I used to sleep with it. And I've kept it over all these years, and now my third son, Knox, has gotten quite attached to it, and so he sleeps with it. So
That's
just kind of
awesome.
cool
That's fun.
to see something that I used to have in my bed as a child, and now one of my kids.
That
Yeah.
is.
It's cool. It looks kind of rough now. It probably needs to be dry cleaned or something, but such a great gift.
That is.
Very cool.
All right, and last but not least, what candy or food item has to be in your stocking at Christmas time?
This one's easy. Hershey's Special Dark Chocolate Bars. I love them so much. I bought some for myself and brought them to recording
Yes, you
tonight.
did. Looking forward to it.
That's funny because I used to have Christmas at my grandmother's house, and they didn't have a chimney, so I grew up without a stocking
Whoa.
for like my whole life.
Because you have a chimney?
Because we didn't have a chimney. There was no chimney at her house. She had a downstairs.
Chimney is not a prerequisite for a stocking.
That's right.
Apparently
Around
it
the
was.
radiator.
Apparently there was a loophole for my parents, and so now I don't know. We just don't. I don't really get candy. I think when we do get something, it is in the dark chocolate category because I love dark chocolate. But I feel like I'm missing out now listening to you guys.
Yeah.
Well, for me, no brainer. There's a seasonal candy. It really only comes out at Christmas time, and every Christmas I anticipate it. I buy numerous of them before Christmas morning because I love them so much, and that's chocolate-covered cherries, specifically the Queen Anne chocolate-covered cherries.
Huh. I haven't had those.
I love them.
Those are
You're
good.
going to have to try them out. I mean, literally, I probably put on 5 pounds every Christmas just because of these things.
Right.
Anytime I go to the grocery store, I buy some
Yeah.
That's awesome.
because I love them. All right. You survived the Christmas
That's
questionnaire.
Thanks, Chris. That was fun.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's get into the games.
Yeah, let's
great.
do it.
Since there wasn't any flavor for Chris to send to me, instead I decided to sing. We'll talk about this card game, just Bill and Chris and me. 2 good reviews, but I guess Chris will give it a 3. What you probably weren't expecting when I got to verse 3. 5 golden rings. Forward to the rules, 3 reviews, too many thoughts on the 12 days of Christmas card game. Woo!
That was awesome.
His original composition.
Dude,
Oh, that
I'm
is so
totally
good.
shocked, man. I had no idea you were going to do that.
Right. He's going to give it a 3? Wow, you're so generous.
I mean, give it a 1. Well, dude, that was awesome. Well,
That
you know
was
what this
awesome.
means. So far, you've sung,
Oh, yeah, and
Wow.
you've...
You've
and I have sung now.
Right. Jason's got to sing now.
Bill,
Yeah, yeah.
Jason, just saying.
I'm in,
Fantastic, man.
That was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
12 Days, published in 2011 by Calliope Games and Gamesmith. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 2,849. Designers of this game, we've mentioned them before, James Ernest and Mike Selinker.
Okay.
So remember, I mentioned these guys before when we talked about Mike Selinker's 100 games you absolutely, positively
yeah.
must play.
Right.
Oh.
And remember that I told you that James Ernest was his buddy. They have a game company now together, Lone Shark Games, and they've designed a lot of games together. James Ernest is known for designing the game Falling. Remember we talked about in the 100 games that you must play according to Mike Selinker. Lords of Vegas, which he co-designed with Mike Selinker, and also a game called Kill Dr. Lucky. And then Mike has also designed Axis and Allies and Betrayal at House on the Hill,
Right.
as we mentioned before.
Oh, okay.
So, in another episode of Firsts, I've obviously explained games. Jason's explained games. Cameron has explained games.
Oh,
Game.
boy.
Now it's Bill's turn.
There we
I
go.
have to say, I am going to confess to all out there that I've got my original podcast nerves back to try to do this. So this is a tall task
We've
for
been
me.
drawing it out tonight as long as possible to make Bill maximally nervous. You have no idea how long we've drawn this.
And you have no idea how
We
much
even
Chris is
invented
really
technical
enjoying it.
difficulties
That's
just
right.
for this.
Right, exactly. Okay,
Take it away, Bill.
here we go. The 12 Days of Christmas, also known as Twelvetide, is the Christian season celebrating the Nativity of Jesus. In Western cultures, Christmas Day is considered the first day of Christmas, and the 12 days are December 25th to January 5th inclusive. The 2 dates are bookended by Christmas and Epiphany, Christmas being the birth of Jesus, and Epiphany marking the arrival of the 3 wise men and the baptism of John the Baptist. And, of course, it is an English Christmas carol that enumerates in the manner of a cumulative song a series of increasingly numerous gifts given on each of the 12 days of Christmas. The carols, whose words were first published in England in 1780, has a Roud folk song index number of 68. Roud, which I have never heard of, is a sort of BGG for folk songs. Although it implies no real popularity, it's a database of folk songs. And if you have a really low number, it means you've been around for a while. And so it was.
Is it only published as like a hardcover book, hand sewn?
Yes, it's in scrolls, and you blow the dust off. No, well, it was online, and I looked at the first 67, and I had no clue what the first 67 folk songs were. But
Okay.
the 12 Days was the first ones I actually recognized because there was no flavor text in this. You've got a little,
Yeah.
Little history.
little history.
Double
of the
flavor
12 Days of
tonight.
Christmas.
That's right.
Exactly.
You know how we love that history.
Exactly. I have to say the singing was a tough act to follow. Though.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about people carrying bird eggs on their head, but
No.
pretty good.
That's true. Okay, this is a card
You have
game.
to learn about the folk song BGG. It's not every day.
That's true. Who knew something like that existed? Okay, this is a card game with 2 decks, a holiday deck and a gift deck. With these decks, there's 2 distinct ways you make points. One is a trick-taking game, and the value of each trick is set by the holiday deck of 12 cards, number 1 to 12 for the 12 days of Christmas, and are valued 1 to 12. Add up the number of points in the tricks you've taken, and that's basically the game number 1. The way you take these tricks is in the second gift deck. It also contains the 12 days of Christmas, but it has the number of cards equal to the day in the deck. For instance, there are 12 drummer drumming cards, 5 golden ring cards, 2 turtle dove cards, and 1 partridge card. So, the start of the game, everyone is dealt 12 cards. Everyone passes a card to the left, more on that later. Then everyone puts a card on the table face down and does a blind flip. Lowest number, i.e. the most rare, has the highest power for taking tricks. So the partridge takes everything, with one exception. 2 turtle doves are the next highest, and so on. You can think of that as death awaits you with big nasty beaks. That's a Monty Python reference. Anyway, the rule book says the lower numbered gifts are more valuable, but that's whatever works for you. Every player draws a card, so they're back up to 12 cards in their hand. And again, pass 1 to the left and lay their cards out for the next highest number in the 12 days of Christmas till they're all gone. Ties cancel each other out, so if 2 people play a 5, for instance, the next highest card takes a trick. There are also 2 0 cards in the deck, Santa and Mrs. Claus. They, of course, beat all the other cards, but in the spirit of Christmas, you cannot keep that trick for yourself, and you must give it to someone else. So that is the first way to score the points, and the game's over when the 12 card is taken. At the end of the game, everyone shows the 12 cards in their hand, and the person with the most of each number gets that many points added to the score. Yep. For instance, if you had 4 7 cards and that was the most, you'd add 7 points to your score.
Yep.
Ties are friendly here, so both people score the value of the card. Once you've scored all 12 days, you total and see who's won. And that's generally how you play 12 days.
Nice.
There, you got it.
And
Well
think
done,
about
Bill.
I did.
I almost said essentially. Don't
I
do
did.
that.
Essentially, there's a lot
Don't
of
be
words
like
I did.
Jason.
So, I have a question to ask here. This game kind of has a gambling, game of chicken component to it. On how long do you save your low cards to get the higher point values? How did that game dynamic play out for you guys?
Yeah, I really thought this was a clever design aspect of this game, because when I first read the rules to this game, and the first time I played it, I was thinking, well, obviously if you've got the 1s and the 2s and the 3s, you're in a really advantageous position, and you are in a way, because you've got the strongest cards, but you would think, well, I'll just hold these to the end and score the best point cards, right? If I've got a 2, then I'll hold it till the 11th day of Christmas and score 11 points. But if the other person holding the 2, if that's not you, does the same, and you both play the 2s at the same time, you cancel each other out.
Right.
So you quickly learn in this game that even though you might be holding the quote-unquote strongest or best cards, you can't necessarily play them on the strongest or the best point-scoring cards, because you knock each other out with ties, which was so clever, I thought, in this game. And it forces you, like Bill said, to play this game of chicken of, okay, so when do I play my 2? Do I play it on the 8 or the 9 point card? But what if the other 2 person is thinking the same thing I am, right? You're kind of playing this funny game with everybody else at the table.
Yeah, I really like push your luck in games. I've mentioned it before. Ink and Gold, I think, is the quintessential push your luck board game. And I think that it works really well in a trick-taking game like this. And speaking of, there's no guarantees if you have the low cards, because even the 1, you would think, okay, well then obviously the person with the 1 can take the 12 every time, every single game. You just automatically get 12 points if you're the lucky winner of the 1. But the thing is, the Santa and Mrs. Claus cards totally throw a wrench into that plan, because if you know that one of them is still out, you are not safe on the 12. So I think it was really well done in this game.
It is. There's an interesting card count thing, too, because when you have 4 people play, the discard deck gets shuffled in right around card 10. So as you count the cards and you're holding your 2 to the end and you've seen it played and you think you've got a guarantee right to the end, you may not. It's a very interesting dynamic there when you get it. And I will have to say, I'm really bad at it. Because the first game, I stayed to the end and I got canceled out with my 2s or 3s or whatever high in it. And I thought the next game will let me back off on that and get something more guaranteed. And the people I were playing with had the same thoughts. So they all backed up and we canceled each other out. So it was very funny.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the phrase card counting, Bill, because I think that card counting plays pretty prominently in this game for the reason that you just mentioned, but for another reason I think as well. I think this game has a nice balance of tactics and strategy, and what I mean by that is in the setting of trying to figure out what you're going to hold in your hand for those in-game scoring. So, as Bill explained the rules, there's points that can be won each trick as you're capturing those point cards, but also, again, if I'm holding the most 12s in my hand at the table, I will get an additional 12 points to the game, or the most 11s, or the most 10s. So I found, the more I played this, there's a card counting aspect of you're paying very close attention to what are people playing to catch the card. If I see a lot of 10s getting played by lots of people at the table, even if I wasn't initially planning on keeping 10s, I start to think to myself, I'm holding 2 10s. Maybe I'll hold these and try to get a couple more and try to keep those, right? Mm-hmm. So what I mean by tactics and strategy, that's more tactical versus a strategy of getting your opening hand and being like, okay, this is what I'm going to try to get the most of this hand. And I feel like that is in flux over the course of the game, what you try to score at the end.
Yeah,
which was a fun puzzle.
Because you will find that as people start passing you cards, if you've been paying attention, you might notice. I think Hayes was playing with us, and he was making a big deal out of it because he played, I think it was 4 or 5 of the 6s.
Right.
And it was like this funny thing because he kept winning the early game tricks with those 6s.
Yeah.
It's kind of a low card for early game. And because of that, I happened to know when I received a 6 in the deck, like, okay, this is one of the final 2, so if I hold on to it, it could be worth 6 points at the end of the game.
Yeah. So here's another thing that I felt, but did you guys ever feel squeezed when you were passing left?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this was one of the real fun parts of the game, I thought, was the angst that came with trying to figure out, 1, what to pass, and 2, what to play.
Yeah.
Because as you get more advanced in the game, you're kind of setting up your hand to what you're trying to score at the end. And you just don't want to pass anything.
Right.
You're like, I don't want to pass any of these cards. I need all these.
I need that low card.
Or I don't want to play this card because I think I have enough 11s. But if I play this 11, am I now throwing away that advantage, right? It gets really difficult to figure out what to give up and play and pass, which I enjoyed. It was a difficult squeeze for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So were there any downsides to this then?
I mean, any trick-taking game, I think you can always argue that it's possible to get dealt a bad hand at the beginning with, say, all high cards and no low cards that you could plan on utilizing later on in the game. However, I do think that should be mitigated by the fact that every turn you're drawing new cards. Because you're not likely to get past a lower card.
Sure.
But the likelihood that you should be able to draw some winners, I think, is there. So I think there's probably some balance there that might mitigate that.
I think for me, the only other thing I would want to mention with potential cons, this isn't a huge grievance, but I think it's worth mentioning, is I do have mixed feelings about the Santa and Mrs. Claus cards, and not in the fact that they're the strongest card in the deck. I actually like that about them. I feel like they're necessary cards. I wouldn't say that they should be taken
mitigate
out.
The 1.
Because it mitigates the 1 and the 2 and the 3 for that matter.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes people play the 0s early and hit somebody who's trying to pick up an 8 or a 9. The thing that's a little weird about it is I don't love that you have to give it to an opponent. I kind of just wish that it just got thrown out. And I think you can't keep the points to yourself because then the card would be too strong, right? But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know.
Thematically, it works so good.
It does work thematically.
To make
you're giving a gift,
Santa
right?
Claus give it to somebody.
And really, I think that's probably why they made the rule more than anything. It's for theme. But I don't love the idea of playing a card myself to benefit somebody else, even if it's denying somebody points, which I think is the strategic reason. I would rather play it and it be a threat to the game and that point scoring card just be removed, if that makes sense.
And what's interesting also about that is how much in the dark you are doing it, because you can see the points that they have accumulated so far in the game, but you have no idea what they're going to make at the end of the game, and there's so much of the game that is determined by that in-game scoring, and so you could very easily give it to the person that's going to win, and you just don't know.
Yep. All right. So we move on to final thoughts?
Sure.
Cameron, why don't you start us this time?
Yeah. So I think maybe first it might be a good idea to do a recap of our scoring thing. Wouldn't you agree?
I told Cameron to remind me of this. So I've been meaning to do this for like the last 12 episodes, and I just forget. Because I'm sure people who jump in with us who are new that don't start from episode 0, they're like, 5 out of 6? That's bad. That's like neutral. Or 5 out of 10, rather. Because we say we give it a 5.
Sounds like a 5, yeah.
Most people score on a 10-point scale. That would be confusing to a lot of people. But yes, I think we should review it. So we grade on a 1 to 6 point scale, with 1 being the lowest, 6 being the highest. For us, if we give a game a 1, that means that we don't like the game, and we don't like the game because we feel like mechanically there's something wrong with the game. There's some sort of mechanism in the game that we feel is broken in some way that causes the game to not be enjoyable. 2, for us, is a bad game, but that's not necessarily because there's anything wrong with the game mechanically. We just don't like the game for whatever reason. The theme, the mechanisms, we just don't enjoy it. 3 for us is what we would call a meh game. It's okay. It's not bad necessarily, but it doesn't excite us. It doesn't do a lot for us. It's a pass for us.
Send it to Bill.
Send it to Bill. Chris's Shelf of Loathing. 4 for us. Now, this is where we're starting to get into the better games. We would consider this to be a good game. We enjoyed it. If somebody asked to play it, we would gladly play it. For me, this is a game that I would keep. 5 is an excellent game. Above average. Really enjoy this game. We seek to play it out. And then a 6 is our favorite games. Our top games. Games that we would never deny a play of, basically. That we really enjoy.
Very cool.
So, with that scale in mind, what do you give 12 Days, Cameron?
All right. Yeah, my overall impression of 12 Days of Christmas is generally pretty favorable. It's a relatively short game. It could potentially be considered a filler, I think, lengthwise. It's simple, and I could actually see it having a wide appeal even for folks who wouldn't normally play heavier games. I didn't notice any issues with it or really have any major cons, which is usually a good sign for me. I'm going to give 12 Days of Christmas a 4. I think it's good, especially for the purpose it seems to serve as that short, wide appeal, cheerful, easygoing game.
Yep.
I found it really easy to have conversations going on about different subjects while playing this game.
Definitely.
You don't have to be fully laser focused while you're playing it, and it's fun.
Nice. For me, I'll just come out and say it, and no suspense here. I thought that 12 Days was an enjoyable game. I am also going to give 12 Days a 4. I've stated on here before that I don't necessarily love games that have a guessing element to them, like this game does, trying to figure out what you think people are going to play when everybody flips their card over. What are people trying to hold back? Games like hoity-toity, things like that, where you're trying to get in the head of your opponents. I don't love those games. However, this is a short game. And I do feel like that the card counting and that hand optimization puzzle of what to pass and what to play was enough for me to overcome my meh feelings about guessing and simultaneous card flips. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a good game. I enjoyed it. I'm going to give 12 Days a 4.
Sweet. What do you think, Bill?
So it's interesting, Chris's question is talking about traditions, because I think we are thinking about how to cultivate traditions, and I've been wanting to come up with games for a while. One of the ones I didn't mention is we do have a Trivial Pursuit style box that came out that's this Christmas trivia, and we do bring that out every Christmas, and it's full of Bible trivia or Christmas pop culture and stuff like that, and we enjoy that. But we have absolutely no other Christmas game in the house that everybody can play.
Yep. They're kind of rare Christmas games.
Yeah. Right.
Really.
Exactly. And we've talked about it a few times. So I wish we had a Christmas game. And I think this one would fit the bill for everybody in my family. Even my wife, I think, could play this because she just doesn't like deep games. And she actually was listening to me go over my instructional text today as I was practicing it. And I think she kind of got it. So that was like, hey, wow, okay, that's good. So on that level, I really like it because I'm looking for something that's like this that I think we could just pull out once a year. And to me, that'd probably be about as much as I'd want to play it, because if this was just a regular game, I might give it a 3. But I think because it's a Christmas game, it's light, we can pull it out once a year, and I could see it becoming You could teach it. I can teach it like a bomb now, man. And I like it. I'll also give it a 4. But I would say that I was leaning 3.5-ish, 4-ish, but because it's a Christmas game, I'm going to give it a 4.
Being generous to 12 Days of
Exactly.
Christmas.
It's got
so nice
Christmas spirit.
How can you crack on Mr. and Mrs. Claus?
Don't be a Grinch, Bill.
What can I say?
All right. Well, if folks out there want to check out 12 Days of Christmas, where could they find it, Chris?
Yeah, so this game is a little on the rarish side.
Okay. Huh.
Although I do feel like I've seen this game on board game store shelves pretty regularly. So check your local store if you're having a hard time. But there are 2 copies on Noble Knight right now.
Okay.
So if you're interested, you might want to try to grab them. If you do, if you use our promotional code GEMS21, you can get 10% off of your order, and that is for this year only. So I think actually this is a good time to remind our listeners that we have extended our relationship with Noble Knight, and entering into 2022, our discount code will actually be HIDDEN22. So if you use it in January, it's HIDDEN22, but if you use it before January 1st, the code is GEMS21. Okay.
Oh, very cool.
All right. Also 4 copies on the BGG Marketplace. So again, not very many. Like I said, you might be able to find it in your local game store as well.
Wow. Are you going to sing us out, Cameron?
And the 12 days of Christmas for me. Once upon a time, a witch lived alone in her house in the depths of the forest. Her favorite hobby was baking yummy gingerbread. In fact, she loved gingerbread so much that she built her entire house out of it. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one who loved it. Rude fairy tale characters passing by were eating away her walls, windows, and doors. One day, the witch decided that she'd had enough of them all helping themselves, and, paying attention to which types of gingerbread these greedy intruders liked the most, she came up with an idea on how to get rid of them once and for all.
It's a Christmas game?
I think, to be honest, it might fit better in the Halloween
games?
episode.
Yeah, it's funny when Bill was talking about having a hard time finding Christmas-themed games. He's right, because there are really, honestly, are not many of them at all. At least not many that seem like they would be any good. And
Right.
when I was trying to think about games for this episode, I was racking my brain trying to figure out games, and I thought, Gingerbread House. That's a game I've always wanted to try.
Yeah. What other time of year do you have a gingerbread house?
Exactly. You make gingerbread houses during Christmas time. And I didn't realize this is about entrapping and killing and eating fairy tale characters, I guess, which is not Christmassy at all. But
I guess I didn't mention the Christmas movie I watch every year is Shrek, when Farquhar is trapping all the mythical creatures.
That's right.
Right.
I'm in the dungeon.
We're rolling with it now.
We're going to roll with it. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So you get the Cameron treatment on this game.
Yes.
It's my second ever game instruction. We'll see how this goes. Gingerbread House. Year of publication is 2018. Its current BGG ranking is 1439.
Mm-hmm.
The designer is Phil Walker Harding, and the publisher...
Lookout Games.
Agricola Caverna. I get B+ on doing my game research. All right. How did we hear about this one, Chris?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this game is designed by Phil Walker Harding, a game designer that I really like, and one that you're probably familiar with. I'm sure you've played at least some of his games. He's the designer of Sushi Go, which most people have played at this point. Imhotep, Archaeology, Silver and Gold, Barren Park, which is a tile laying game that I like. If I were to give it a hidden gem score, I'd give it a 4 out of a 6. And he's actually really been into making these tile laying games recently. So Barren Park, now Gingerbread House, and also most recently a game called Llama Land, which I have not played. But like I said, he's kind of in this tile laying phase right now. So I wanted to give Gingerbread House a shot.
Okay.
And it seemed to fit with the theme. Well.
Use your imagination.
Yeah.
I think it does. It counts.
Close enough.
If you look at this game, honestly, it really does have this Christmassy feel, right? There's
very
like
red
icing
and
over
green.
all the cookies and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do a brief rules summary. In Gingerbread House, you're going to be primarily scoring points each time you're able to successfully capture a fantasy character, each of which will be represented on cards. You can also acquire bonus cards by completing floors of your house that can earn you extra points according to which characters you capture and some other special objectives. So we'll talk about the components. Each player starts with a player mat and 15 of these double tiles. A player mat includes a starting floor of the player's gingerbread house consisting of 9 squares, each containing either a colored cookie or a special symbol. These double tiles are essentially rectangular and contain 2 squares each with either colored cookies or special symbols that, when placed in the house, would cover up 2 squares. All right, so how do you take your turn? On your turn, you will reveal 3 of your tiles, and either place a double tile into your house or discard a double tile and take 2 staircase tiles. When you place a tile into your house, you receive the corresponding colored cookies you covered up. If you covered up a special symbol, you execute that symbol. The special symbols are things like a staircase, which lets you take a staircase tile. The arrow lets you swap out one cookie for another. A gate lets you reserve a character card from the display. If you covered a wild cookie tile, you may choose any colored cookie or execute any of the special symbols. If the double tile ever covers 2 of the same symbol, you can execute that action a 3rd time. So cover up 2 blue cookies, get a 3rd blue cookie, etc. After placing your tile and getting your goodies, you may complete any character cards that either you had reserved or which are in the character card display. After satisfying any cards you were able to fulfill, you check whether you've completed a floor of your house. A floor is completed when a 3x3 layer of the house is completely covered by tiles. If a floor has been completed, you may choose one of the bonus cards from the display, up to 3 bonus cards per player. The benefits on the bonus cards are things like variable extra points for each captured character or building your house up to a certain level. Once all that's done, there's a cleanup phase in which you replenish your revealed tiles and replenish the character display for the deck. Play continues for a total of 15 rounds. And at the end of the game, points from each completed card are counted along with any additional points earned from bonus cards and leftover cookies. The player with the most points wins the game, and that's generally and fantastically and stupendously how you play Gingerbread House.
Woo! Awesome.
I did it.
Good job.
How many minutes is that?
Probably too
Gonna
many
edit
minutes.
the heck out of that, baby. It's a good job, though.
I was very thorough.
Yes, you were. Leave nothing to chance.
All right. So Gingerbread House. What did you guys think of the puzzle in this game of how to build your house while trying to do recipe fulfillment? I feel like that was kind of a unique mechanic.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed that part of the game. There's not much to this game. That was my favorite part of the game. The way that you construct your little 3x3 gingerbread house. It's not a lot of space.
Right.
But I think that's part of the fun, is trying to figure out how to optimize that space in the most efficient way possible to get done what you want to get done. I like games like this. So a couple that come to mind would be Habitats. Also has that tile laying puzzle of adjacencies, which I really enjoy. And then another game that I think we all really enjoy, Tiny Towns. Tiny Towns, this game really reminds me of a lot. And I'll talk more about that later. But the thing about this game that's unique, I think, to those games is those games are a 2-dimensional puzzle. Gingerbread House is a 3-dimensional puzzle. Because not only are you thinking about how you lay those tiles next to each other to try to get types of cookies or symbols next to each other because you know they're going to cover them in the future, but when you cover them in the future, you also have to think about what you're putting on top of there, because you've got adjacencies that you have to think about as you move upward in a 3-dimensional direction. So you're thinking in 2 dimensions, but also as you build up, which I think was really interesting and fun and enjoyable in this game.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. What I thought back to in order fulfillment, and one games that we play a lot with my family, is the Spice Road series and the order fulfillment. There, when you're doing your order fulfillment, you're creating a series of formulas so that if you start with the green spice, you need 3 green spice to build 2 red spice to get 1 gold spice, right? This one is fairly straightforward, I guess. When you're laying down your tiles, it's not a multi-step process, right? It's just creatively
collect what you need, and
collect what you need, and looking at that tile thing. So to me, in some ways, this is a great starter order fulfillment game, because it's pretty easy to see right away what you're doing. Then you can think creatively in building your house. I agree, the building up part was kind of ingenious in how he handled it. So yeah, I have to say I enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when you look at it, it's simple in the fact that you're like, well, I need blue gingerbread right now. I'll cover that blue symbol up and get blue gingerbread. Seems simple, but you can't just think about that. You also have to be thinking a couple steps ahead, at least I think, about how when you lay on top of how you're going to position those tiles to set yourself up for future turns.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit more of a multi-step process going on there.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed about the house building aspect of this game is that you really are incentivized to figure out not just how you're going to plan ahead from the standpoint of the character cards you're trying to complete, but especially in the beginning of the game, it's really important that you figure out, how do I complete my floor as soon as possible,
right?
So that I can get at least my first bonus card, because this isn't exactly an engine building game, but there is a synergy component between many of the bonus cards that are available and completing those character cards. Yeah. Right? Because as I mentioned, so many of those cards are get 2 points for each monster that you capture, 2 points for each human that you capture, those types of cards. You need to know what you're going for earlier on in the game, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the bonus cards that are at the top of the board that kind of direct your play and how you build your gingerbread house. How did you guys feel about those bonus cards?
Well, I thought they were very much an important part of the game.
Definitely.
They can totally influence the outcome of it. What is kind of unfortunate is there can be a limited number of those bonus cards that are impactful. There's some of them that are associated with things like whether your character's happy or not, or a monster or not, and you get +2 for every one of those characters that you have in your bin. And Cameron, I have to say, you've been soft pedaling because when you capture a creature, you are putting them in their dungeon. I don't know what happens when they go out of the dungeon. I'm thinking they go to the chopping block. I don't know, but those guys are getting offed, man. So this game is not nice in that point of way. But anyway, those cards are super important. You could say it's an interesting decision to say my total whole goal is to get that bonus card before anybody else.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, based on turn order, you mean?
Based on turn order or just some other aspects of the game.
I agree. This is one issue that I had with this game. I like the idea of the bonus cards because they give you direction.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Based on which ones you acquire and take, it gives you point potential and helps you decide how you're going to build your house to score the most points possible. That's good. But you're absolutely right, and this is designed on purpose, is that some of those cards are just better and more useful than others.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I'm not really sure why he did that, because like you said, Bill, it incentivizes everyone to try to finish their first 3 floors as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it doesn't allow for any clever play. There might be good opportunities for me to build up on a side and cover up some things and buy some cards, but really all that matters in the first half of the game is just getting your first floors done as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Which the real impact of that means you're going for small characters, right? So that
exactly
reduces your spectrum of choice.
And again, this is a problem I have, is the game is dictating the way that I need to play, which is always an issue for me.
This is the thing that honestly really frustrated me about this game. I mean, we played this game numerous times, and I felt the effects of this exact issue every time. And I started first in one of the games because we had this question as we got into repeated plays. Is turn order extremely important in this game? And I think my conclusion is I don't think that it necessarily matters. I think that the most important thing that matters in Gingerbread House is, are you fortunate in the way that turn order happens to be able to get the smallest ones? Because there's this compounding effect, and I think it comes from the fact that when you complete a card, you immediately get a bonus wild tile, which not only helps you complete your floors faster, but it gives you more goodies because you're immediately placing it in your house.
I think you hit on something very, very important. I totally agree with you. I never like it in games where there's this mechanism where a person takes a turn and we have to refill a display, and you refill the display, and the next person is like, "Oh, that card is perfect for me.
Yeah, I'll just turn in my change, and
I have exactly what I need." And like you're alluding to at the beginning of the game, if that keeps happening to these cards that only cost 2 gingerbread, and you keep getting the heavy gingerbread cards, those people are going to finish their first 3 floors before you, and that puts you behind.
It's an imbalanced thing because of the bonus wild tile. It makes it too valuable to get small things, despite the fact that the small ones are worth fewer points.
I don't know how you guys feel about the special action cards that are on the tiles that allow you to put somebody in your dungeon, to swap out a tile, or what's the third one? Get a staircase. What you thought of the values of those. But to me, since you have really a finite set of 15 turns, right, that you needed those 15 turns to be collecting gingerbread. And every time you used one of those, to me, I felt like that was a step in a non-efficient direction, right? And so every time
they're very situational.
Well, and they sort of mitigate the fact that you weren't lucky, right? It's inefficient to have to take that gate turn or to have to do stairs or any of those other things. I completely agree with that point.
Well, before we move into final thoughts, I'll say one more good thing about this game. Since we've been talking most about cons, which I don't necessarily think is unwarranted. We don't talk about this often in games because, to be quite honest, a lot of the games that we play look kind of crappy.
Yeah.
This is a pretty beautiful game.
Oh, yeah.
I actually had this written down as well.
I like the look of this game. It looks very colorful. I really, really like how the domino gingerbread pieces that you use to construct your building are thick and they look like a cookie. You know what I mean? The aesthetic of this game is really good.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed fiddling and playing with these chunky tiles and bits and stuff.
And seeing all the mythological creatures from around the world, right? I mean, they're not
We had
just...
to Google a couple.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they're
true.
just they're very cool.
It's very original, too. None of the renderings looked like classic Disney Peter Pan or anything like that. They're all kind of original artwork, which I did appreciate.
All right.
Cool. Well, should we move into final thoughts?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Want to go first, Bill?
I suppose so. My final thoughts. I enjoyed the look of the game. I enjoyed playing Lord Farquhar and rounding up all the mythical creatures. It was fun having my demented gingerbread making house, and it was still kind of lighthearted and fun. I did have some frustrating parts. I did feel like there were some random moments in there. I think there was a stretch where I got a bunch of tiles that did have all the special squares on it, so I couldn't start doing any of the doubling spots, and so I don't know. I felt like that affected the end of the game, and the previous game I didn't have that, so I don't know how often that happens. I do feel like you can house rule it into something better than it is today, but I know that's not really what we rate on. But I'm going to go with a 3, I think. I did have fun with it. I'm not sure I want to play it again, but it was cool for what it was.
All right. Christopher?
Okay. You got me wondering why you want to go last now. Okay. So, I think we made it pretty clear. This game does have some issues, I think, with the bonus card scoring and the inequalities of how some bonus cards just seem a lot more valuable than others, and that kind of racing aspect it creates in the first half of the game or so. I don't love that. I don't love getting a benefit from a random flip off the deck and just lucking into points based on card flips. It's problematic. I think a game like Tiny Towns, which I mentioned before, gives me a very similar feel to this game. It is really much better than this game, to be quite honest. It really is. I think Tiny Towns is a fantastic game. I really enjoy it a lot. It's at least a 5, maybe a 6 out of 6 for me. It's fun. However, and this might come as a surprise, as hard as I've been on it, the 3-dimensional puzzle of building the house is fun. I enjoyed that part of puzzling out how I was going to crisscross my tiles and build it up to get what I needed. So, despite the negatives, that was fun enough for me to want to keep it. I don't want to let go of this game. There's something about it that I just don't want to get rid of it. And for me, the 3-4 line is the break line between getting rid of a game and keeping it. And I want to keep it because I enjoy that part of it. So I'm going to give it a 4. It's right on the line, and it could drop to a 3 over time. But for now, I'm keeping it.
All right.
But Tiny Towns is better.
Okay. Well, unfortunately for me, I think the way this game is geared right now, I think the cons that I've mentioned, I think they outline a flaw for Gingerbread House.
Wow.
Every time I played this game,
I had a feeling this one.
every time I played this game, the person who won was the person who completed the most small cards and got the most wild bonuses, and the chain reaction was working for them. To me, you should not have to get lucky with card flops and turn order in order to snag the cards that provide the only path to victory. I think there could be ways to fix it, but like Bill said, we aren't here to review what it could be. I thought about this, and I don't want this to come off as just sour grapes because I lost a bunch of times. I tried several approaches, going for all big dudes, going for some type of 50-50 split, targeting only small characters, and every time I was at the mercy of luck and turn order to get the small ones, and the person who managed to get the most small ones won the game. I think there are a lot of interesting mechanics here. I agree with you about the building housing. I enjoyed that puzzle aspect of it. But I come to play games to feel competitive. And if I enter playing a game and I don't feel like I can be competitive just on the virtues of my ability to analyze and make decisions in a game, that doesn't work for me. So, yeah, generally I enjoy recipe fulfillment games, but this isn't one that I enjoy, and it's not one that I recommend. I'm giving this one a a 1.
Oh, whoa.
Ooh, wow, I did not see that coming.
Okay.
It's where I land. Merry Christmas.
I'm rounding
Merry
you all up.
freaking Christmas. This isn't even a Christmas game.
Right.
Okay. Pretty harsh. I thought you were going to give it a 2.
I don't judge anyone else for their review, but that's where I land.
I love it when we don't agree, man.
That's right.
Right.
I love it. All right. Okay.
All right. Well, where can folks find Gingerbread House if they're interested in
A broken game.
testing my thoughts on this?
All right. So this game is not very old. Like Cameron said, this game was published in 2018, so this was pretty readily available. You shouldn't have much trouble finding it. There are several copies available on Noble Knight. You can pick it up there. Also, 21 copies on the BGG Marketplace.
All right.
Sweet.
There you go.
All right. Those are our thoughts on Gingerbread House.
It's the busiest time of year at the North Pole, with only days to go until Santa leaves to make his yearly trip around the world. After his long night and all the work that led up to it, Santa always takes a vacation somewhere sunny and warm. As a reward for helping bring joy to children around the world, Santa takes his hardest working team of elves with him. Can you lead your deserving team of elves to claim this reward? There are toys to be built, reindeer to be fed, and coal to be mined. Sadly, not all children are on the nice list. Free candy canes and gingerbread houses all year long might seem wonderful, but even elves can tire of them. By working hard and smart, you and your team of elves may wind up on a beach drinking something with an umbrella in it.
Ho, ho, ho. Back to work, Hermie.
Dang, man. I need to read these flavor texts before we play the games. I didn't realize Santa was taking the winning teams to the Florida
It's a competition
Keys.
for, yeah,
Right, gonna get them all dry.
sunny vacation.
That's awesome. All right. Santa's Workshop, published in 2017 by Rio Grande Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 5,316. Designer of this game is Keith Ferguson. This is his only published design.
Okay.
One game. A brief rule summary for Santa's Workshop. Santa's Workshop is a worker placement game very much in the style of Lords of Waterdeep, where the players control a team of elves who are collecting different materials in order to assemble toys for cookie points, which in this game are victory points. The game takes place over 9 rounds. In each round, the players will place their worker elves on an action space on the board, one at a time, executing the action that that particular action space allows. So very typical worker placement style of game. Before we start talking about all the different action spaces, let's begin by talking about the toy cards. Each toy requires different combinations of wood, metal, and fabric cubes, and then once all of the cubes are acquired, they require a certain number of assembly tokens, which represent the time it takes to construct that toy. Of note, some toy recipes allow for plastic components to be substituted for the aforementioned components. However, for every plastic cube that is used, the victory point value of that toy will decrease slightly in a stepwise fashion. Players can work on up to 5 toys at a time, and they can acquire more toys to work on at the mailroom action selection location. Players acquire wood, metal, and fabric cubes by placing their workers in the corresponding shops on the board. These locations have 2 spaces for workers. One space allows you to take 2 resources of that type at a cost of 1 coal, while the other spot allows you to take 3 resources, so more of that type, at a cost of 3 coal. The plastic slab is unique in that it has a single action space that allows you to take 7 plastic cubes with no associated coal cost. The assembly room action spaces allow players to take 1 or 2 assembly tokens, which are required for the construction of their toys. The classroom action spaces, another space on the board, allows players to upgrade their individual elf workers, enabling that elf to acquire more resources or assembly tokens when that particular elf takes the upgraded action. Finally, the reindeer stable consists of 8 different reindeer stalls where players can interact with one of the reindeer, which will give them a variety of different small benefits such as a resource cube, an assembly token, 2 coal, or even the first player marker. Of note, each reindeer stall also has a victory point token placed on it to start the game, and each round an additional victory point token is added to each reindeer. When someone chooses a particular reindeer action, they take all of the victory points that have accumulated on the reindeer up to that particular moment. So if you're familiar with the game Small World, it's very similar where coins or victory points will build up on a thing until somebody takes it and they take the action and all the points that are on it. In addition to all the points that the players earn for their completed toys, the players can also earn points during the game as well. At the end of the 3rd, 6th, and 9th rounds of play, Santa does an inspection where he rewards the hardest working elf teams. Whichever player or players constructed the most toy cards in the 3 previous rounds will get 2 points per completed toy card, while the player or players who constructed the second most toy cards will get 1 point per completed toy card. Most points at the end of the game is the winner. That is generally how you play Santa's Workshop.
Good job.
All
right. So, as I mentioned, this is a worker placement game. And as we all know, if you've been in the hobby for a while, I would say that the board game hobby is pretty saturated with worker placement games. It's one of the most popular genres of board game for sure. So I guess we have to ask the question, since we're spending time reviewing it and playing it, do you feel like this game does enough to stand out within a crowded genre of worker placement games? And if so, what did you like about it? Maybe it doesn't stand out. What do you think?
I will go with the fact that, well, one, it's a Christmas game, and like you're saying, it is rare. So on one level, it stands out. It's on its own. I will say it also stands out because to me, this game was gorgeous. Even looked better than the last one. For instance, the worker placement cards, those are like letters to Santa. On the back sides of it, they're addressed to Santa Claus, and you flip them over.
Super cool.
Yeah.
The little child's name is written, like clearly written with a mouse.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. That to me was just so cool. And I don't know. I think it kind of has a place in the world. I do think it has some problems, which we're going to get to later. But I think it's unique enough to have a look.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think my answer to this game is similar. You definitely have the feel when you play this game that it became a worker placement. I think that the mechanics of this game were developed in an effort to try to create a game around the theme of Santa's Workshop.
Sure.
It does not feel like Santa's Workshop theme was added to the mechanics of how do we pair worker placement with recipe fulfillment. I think it was the other way around, and it comes through.
Yeah, I think you guys made good points. I'd say of the 3 games that we've reviewed tonight, this one nails the Christmas theme the best.
Sure.
For sure. It definitely captures that. It comes across really strongly in the mechanisms. Totally agree with you. As it stands, it's just a worker placement game, taking away the Christmas theme. I would say that it's very polished. I think, Bill, maybe you said streamlined, and I agree with you. I think you could maybe make the argument, well, not maybe, I'm going to make the argument. We'll talk about this more in detail later, but maybe it's too polished. I've said things before that I like rough edges in games, that I feel like it allows for clever play and things like that. And I would say that this one, it's hard to explain, and I hope that these thoughts become more clear as we talk more about our thoughts, but I'm keeping it kind of general right now. But say the game feels very cookie cutter or formulaic, maybe might be a good word for the game. It will feel very familiar if you've played worker placement games before.
The last game was more cookie cutter.
If you've played worker placement games before, you will immediately understand how this game works.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
It will feel very familiar to you. I almost think of it as like you were in a board game design class in college and somebody was like, make a worker placement game. This is what they would do.
Right.
Maybe I'm suggesting that it maybe feels a little amateurish.
Interesting.
I might be. But we'll leave it at that for now. So before we get into cons or anything like that, let's talk a little bit more about pros. What did you all like about this particular game?
I liked the spectrum of choices that you had when you had the opportunity to lay down your elves. There was going to school and upgrading, which was an interesting choice.
Improving your worker.
There was a sidebar that gave you the ability to increase your amount of charcoal that you could get and those kinds of things. So there was an implied order. I don't want to necessarily jump into the negative, but it was implied, and it also felt like there was a path that you needed to go to really to have the first steps to start your engine for your order placement kind of things.
That's a good point.
So anyway,
Yeah, I also thought that the diversity of the worker locations was well done. Obviously, it's recipe fulfillment, so you know that there's going to be some locations where you're going to have to go there to get stuff, right? But what I thought was interesting about this is that despite the fact that everyone has to do this one thing at some point in the game, that the game builds in these mechanisms that help you to optimize that process.
Yes, good thoughts there. I think you both have kind of mentioned the order recipe fulfillment being enjoyable, and I enjoyed that part of the game too. As I mentioned in the rules explanation, it feels a lot like Lords of Waterdeep. Mm-hmm. A lot like Lords of Waterdeep. Mm-hmm. It's clear that he had played that game before. Mm-hmm. I think that's necessarily bad, but it definitely borrows a lot from that. I think for me, my favorite part of this game was actually the reindeer stalls.
Yeah,
and the reason
surprisingly.
And the reason I really liked it is when you look at what the reindeer allow you to do, the actions are suboptimal. Basically what I mean is you can accomplish the same thing at another spot on the board much more efficiently or get more, or it'd be a better action basically. Essentially, at the beginning of the game, you might ask yourself, why would I ever go to these spaces, with the exception of the first player marker? Mm-hmm. However, as the victory point tokens begin to pile on those reindeer, as people are not taking those actions because they're suboptimal,
right?
Suddenly, they start to become optimal.
Yep.
Because you're like, well, I only get one cube when I get there, but there's like 6 points on there, right? That's the kind of stuff. That's where this designer started to find something good. Mm-hmm. I'm actually starting to think about something now. Yeah. As opposed to, okay, I have this toy. I clearly need these cubes. I'm going to go here to get the cubes to make the toy. I know what I need to do.
Or I'm going to upgrade all my dudes so that I can do all that faster. Right.
Seems formulaic, and I know what I need to do. Now you've incorporated something where I'm actually kind of thinking about something else.
And caring about what other players might be interested in doing as well.
Right, exactly. So for that, I think he was onto something there, and I liked that part of the game. It was my favorite part.
I will point out that one of the rules in this game is you collect a resource and you can't use it, you throw it away, and you can basically be working on 5 toys at a time, right? And so there is the need to have enough toys out there so that when you are collecting resources, there's
no loss of excess.
There's no loss of excess, and
because there's no bank. We should mention that there's no bank.
There's no bank.
If you
there's no
can't place them on a card, then you lose them.
Which I like that, but also because there's only 2 spots in each one of the places where you're producing your wood or your fabric or whatever, they get blocked, especially in a 4-person game, and you might be needing that metal that turn and you can't get it, and so you're going to have to get something else. So you have to plan ahead enough to have a place for stuff to land. And I appreciated that. I thought that was an interesting decision point or challenge that it offered players to make sure that they were set up to not be wasteful in any one of their turns.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so talked about some good things here. I think now would be a good time to transition to the cons. I'm going to take a stab here at what I think might be a good conversation starter. How did you all feel about the assembly room? The room where you have to get assembly tokens to finish your toy. So if I didn't make it clear from the rules, in order to finish a card to score points, you have to get assembly tokens, but it's important to note that you can't start collecting assembly tokens for a toy until all the cubes are on the card. So in other words, you can't bank assembly tokens on a card and then get the cubes you need. You have to do it after you've collected the cubes.
After the recipe has been fulfilled.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So how did you feel about that action and dealing with those tokens?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer here is that it does represent a bottleneck in the game.
For sure.
There's no reason to go there earlier on in the game because you can't, essentially. It's
unless you have some really cheapy cards.
Correct. And it's odd to have a set of action spaces in a worker placement game that the rules actually prevent you from going there at any point, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know of any other game where it's like you can't go there unless you have X, but it does create, especially later on in the game, when your people are more aggressively trying to fulfill those orders, it becomes a bottleneck.
I will say I liked it for the most part. I think there's a very in-game maybe problem with it, but I liked the fact that you finish your toy and then it goes to the final production, right? And that was kind of a 2-stage process because it added a little bit of complication to something that might have been way too simple.
I'll just briefly mention that I agree. I think there is a bottleneck here. I agree with what you're saying, Bill. I think what you're getting at is I'm not opposed to there being anxiety or angst or stress about feeling like I can't get into a space because everybody's trying to go there. I think that's
a worker placement game.
That's part of a worker placement game, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
not what we're saying, is that, oh, this game's too hard because everybody's trying to go where I'm going to go. That's part of worker placement, is jockeying for turn order, right?
Right. Yeah.
I guess the problem that I have with the game is the game seems to promise to you that there are multiple paths to victory here of, well, maybe you can just try to do a bunch of small cheapy cards throughout the game. But the problem with that is that it's just so hard to compete with somebody who's doing bigger cards, because it's just harder to manage all of those small cheaper cards through that bottleneck than if you're just managing one or two cards. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
I feel like, and we saw this, I feel like in the results of the games that we played, is that the people that did better were the people who were going for fewer higher point scoring cards, which are just easier to manage, fewer actions, fewer complication, easier to get it through the assembly room than all these people that are trying to keep all these balls juggled in the air of these smaller toy projects, if that makes sense. So for me, the problem with the assembly room is not the competition for spaces, is that it incentivizes, in my opinion, a dominant strategy. That's my problem with the game, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's totally true. And I guess at this point we should talk about the point ranges, because you can get toys that are up into the 40 points and 30 points, right? And then you have toys all the way down to the 10-point range.
4
and,
points if you're using plastic.
Small, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. And there's a high cost for that small card, because it takes an elf to go there to the green thing.
It's actions, right?
Yeah, it's an action, and really it becomes a high percentage of a turn and low efficiency. So I totally get what you're saying. It forces the bigger stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I want to jump in here is because I thought about this, and especially in relation to my concerns about Gingerbread House, right, where I think that you are incentivized to go for the smaller things. I think in this one, you are incentivized to try to strike a balance, right? I think this game does a good job at attempting to, yes, incentivize you to go for some bigger cards. In fact, I would even go as far to say I don't think you can win if you don't fulfill at least one or two of the larger cards.
I would definitely agree with that.
But I think that if you only, say, went for those larger cards, you're probably going to miss out on somewhere in the realm of, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 points that you could have gotten by getting the every 3 rounds scoring, right? Because if you only ever filled 2 or 3 cards the whole game, you're not going to get points there.
That's peanuts, though. Like
it is.
I think that's his way of trying to compensate for maybe a perceived issue of this.
So you don't feel like it's enough.
No, this dominant strategy of just getting these higher point cards is like, well, I'll create a scoring every 3 rounds and reward these people who did these cheaper gifts and give them 2 points for every card. But that's not even close to enough points because, I mean, Cameron, in the games you won, I think your final score was like in the 150 to 160 point range.
I think, yeah, it was something like that.
Who the heck cares about 2 points per card when you're
getting 10
finishing
points at the end of 3
maybe
rounds.
4 cards?
Right.
What is that? 8 points in a 160 point game?
Yeah,
that's nothing.
Yeah,
right. It wasn't even close to making up the difference. So if you're going to do that, he needed to make those more valuable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that what you're kind of getting at, just to kind of bring back together all of our thoughts on other worker placement games and stuff like that, and especially with our concerns about multiple paths to victory. For example, I think about a really, really good worker placement game that I love a lot that I think does multiple paths to victory so well, which is Orleans. Mm-hmm. Right, where I feel like I've played that game 6 or 7 different times and had 3 or 4 different expressions of a win. Right, where it was like, oh, you know, Ben won because he combined this and this element, and you won because you combined this and this element in this track. And maybe you don't see that in this game. And I think I would agree. Right. I think I would agree with that. Replayability is not nearly as high than with a game that clearly has mix and match your way to victory. So I can definitely appreciate that frustration.
So we move into final thoughts?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll start. Because what you were saying, Cameron, kind of segues nicely into what I'm going to say. So I won't take too long. But the problem that I have with this game is just what you were saying. You know, a good worker placement game gives you the tools or materials to be clever and come up with different combinations to find a new way to win each game. based on how your opponents are playing or what the board state presents to you. I'm pretty convinced that this game is solvable, and I think I have solved it, to be quite honest. And I say that unarrogantly, but I just think after my plays of it, I think there's just an optimal way to play this game. You take a couple of workers, you go to the classroom, first thing, upgrade a few, focus on a few materials, go for the big cards, push through the toys, on to victory. Really, the only decision point I think comes in this game is when do I choose to go on a reindeer and take the points that are on there and take the less optimal action instead of just going in the workroom, and doing that action. I just feel like from now to infinity, I would play this game the exact same way every time because I just feel like that it's best. And that's just not what I'm looking for in games. So for that reason, I have to give this game a 3. I didn't hate the game while I was playing it. I mean, I found the action fulfillment enjoyable, but I just kept thinking, man, there just seems to be one way to do this. Now, having said that, a couple of things. One, I'm going to keep the game, even though it's a 3, because I want to test this. Because this is one game that I wish we could have played a little bit more, and we just didn't have the time to see if I'm right. I feel like I am. Maybe I'll issue a rebuttal later, but I want to test it. And then 2, one more quick thing I'd say, and Bill, it's something you said, and I'm going to reiterate it. Who is this game for? I think if you have family or friends who you want to try to introduce heavier-ish games to, like a new genre, like they play party games or stuff like that, and you want to try a Euro-y style game, and you want to try worker placement, this would be a good one.
Right.
Normally, I think about games like Stone Age or Lords of Waterdeep, but that can be a bridge too far for some people. I think this game is simpler than those 2 games, and those games are simple.
Right.
This would be a good way to teach people how worker placement works. But once you figured out how worker placement works,
you probably want to move on.
I think you're done with this game, right?
Right.
So maybe it has that function, but outside of that, I don't know. I'm probably just going to be getting rid of it.
Okay. So many of the things that you pointed out, I agree with. I think the production part of it is kind of a good on paper thing. I think it needed a 2-stage process because just the plain formula fulfillment was just not enough. But how it was implemented, it just breaks the game in some ways. So, yeah, I agree with you that I can think in my head the exact order of everything I would do from now to infinity. As far as upgrade the charcoal I'm going to get steel so that I can be able to do that, or train for steel or whatever in the right order. And then the only other question is, when do I get the Christmas tree to be the first player at the end of the game? So I'm going to give it a 3 as well.
Yeah, you should never walk into a game night knowing a game you're going to be playing, knowing how you're going to play it before the game has started.
Right.
That's a fatal flaw for a game.
Again, and I'll give the similar kind of caveat. I could see having this in my house to have it to play it at Christmas because I have the people there that I don't think would necessarily see that.
Right. And you could play it with them, and if they liked it, you could be like, you like this? Now let's try Stone Age. Right. Now let's try Lords of Waterdeep, because it actually has better decisions. If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll dive in, and big surprise here since I won this game, and apparently that's my
twice
abduction and so forth. I actually enjoyed this game.
Sure you did.
I think that it is well designed. I think that it, falls on the more elementary end of worker placement games. I think it's a totally fair assessment. Overall, I think this game is about efficiency in your order of operations. I think that it is a game that you can't just hone in on one type of thing. You have to diversify. You have to try to figure out how to optimally score points in the ways that the game presents you to score points. And you basically have to optimize your 3 workers so that you're wasting as little as possible. I enjoyed figuring out that puzzle because you start the game with different cards each game. It's not obvious which upgrades you need earlier on than others, even though I think it's fair to say that you know you're going to have to get some upgrades. For me, I am going to give it a 4. I really did enjoy playing this game. I would play it again. So Merry Christmas, everyone. I've been giving out stale, mediocre ratings for a while. I dropped a 1 earlier. Ending on a high note, giving this one a 4.
There you go.
So you gave a 4 to the games that you won, and you gave a 1 to the game that you lost. Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
I think we've proven that point pretty well.
This is abduction at its finest.
Well, if you want to test our theories out, if you want to see if I'm full of bull or Cameron's full of bull, you can pick up this game on Noble Knight and some other online retailers. It is available, and there is only one copy on BGG, actually, interestingly. So you might have to go through an online retailer.
People are keeping it.
I don't think so. But you can find it there.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this Christmas-themed episode of Hidden Gems. If you like what we're doing here, please remember it's a huge help to us if you'd leave us a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice, and follow us on your various social media platforms. Check out the BGG Guild if you want to interact with us or share a game that you think is a hidden gem. And if you're so inclined, you can also support the show financially by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/hiddengemspodcast, where you can get access to exclusive content, coupon codes, and more, or by picking up an HG logo tee on our website at hiddengemsboardgamepodcast.com/store. Remember, between now and the end of the year, you can get that shirt for 15% off with the coupon code JingleGems. Until next time, I'm your host, Cameron.
This is Chris.
This is Bill.
Thanks for listening. This episode of Hidden Gems, number 23, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on December 20, 2021. Join us in 3 weeks for a battle of epic proportions as Chris and his nemesis Bill go head-to-head in a 2-player game showdown. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our Board Game Geek Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Ghidorah. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Caitlin Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Caitlin Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, Guild number 3874. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.